This is Miller Philosopher. Tauriel is, in my view, the most tragic character across both of Peter Jackson's trilogies. And not because of what she did, but rather what she could have been. From the moment she appeared in promotional material for The Desolation of Smaug, she was already controversial. You can think of her as a pre-Rings of Power Galadriel, so to speak. A strong female character seemingly forced introduced into a quote-unquote male-dominated narrative, and immediately met with backlash. Some fans decried her inclusion as political pandering, while others were just upset that she wasn't in Tolkien's original book of The Hobbit. Evangeline Lilly, who portrayed Tauriel, was understandably hesitant therefore to take on the role. She didn't want to become a lightning rod for fan outrage, nor did she want to be typecasted again as a romantic prize that was caught between two male leads. And she was reportedly assured that this wasn't going to happen. And yet it did. But despite this, what drew me to Tauriel wasn't the love triangle at all. It was the political and cultural tension that she embodied. Tauriel stood in direct ideological opposition to Thranduil, her king, who clung to isolationism while Middle-earth was visibly shifting. Tauriel, as captain of the guard, was on the front lines. She saw the encroaching darkness firsthand, something that Tolkien often wrote about when speaking of Mirkwood. Her position should have given her the authority to speak boldly, and we get glimpses of that. Just enough to see the potential, but never enough to see it fulfilled. I also appreciated that Tauriel represented the Sylvan Elves, a group often overshadowed by their High Elven kin. The Desolation of Smaug makes it clear that Thranduil and Legolas are not Sylvan, they are Sindar elves, and for lore enthusiasts like myself, that distinction matters. While both groups are considered Morroquindi, or Dark Elves, by the Noldor and anyone from Valinor, the Sindar held a slightly elevated status due to their tumultuous yet deeper history with the Eldar. This difference manifests in their temperament. The Sylvan Elves are portrayed as more hot-tempered, proud, and less wise, traits that Tauriel embodied perfectly. And this historical precedent was set in Tolkien's writings as well. During the War of the Last Alliance, of the 5 kings who died, one of them was a Sylvan Elf, along with another one who was Sindar, and this was because they had refused to take orders and charged ahead prematurely, suffering devastating losses as a result, and thus the cost of their folly was so severe that they withdrew from the battlefield for the remainder of the war. And Thranduil in many ways channels that legacy since his father was one of those 2 kings that were killed. Now, what makes Tauriel especially compelling is that she wasn't entirely bound by canon necessarily. She wasn't locked into a predetermined fate like Galadriel or Elrond. She could have been a lens into the internal variations among the elves, a voice from the margins yet also on the inside, offering a perspective that was both lore-grounded and emotionally resonant. A perspective that was internal and personal, giving a view into the differences and nuances of elven societies and the differences between them, and how they weren't a monolithic group of people, as often seen and portrayed as. But then came studio interference, as we all know. The love triangle, the baiting of critics who accused Tolkien's works and adaptations of lacking strong women without understanding how he actually wrote them. Tauriel became a symbol, but not of empowerment, but of compromise. And compromise done badly. And that's the heartbreaking part of this. To this day, I skip most of the love triangle scenes when rewatching the trilogy, except for the last one that ties directly into Kili's death, a moment that, at least for me, connects more to the lore and doesn't feel as forced. Essentially, that Tauriel's tragedy isn't just narrative, it's meta. She represented the cost of the Lord of the Rings success. Before Peter Jackson's trilogy, Tolkien's works flew under the radar. They were beloved, yes, but not scrutinized, not politicized, not commodified, not commercialized. After the films, Everyone wanted a piece of Middle-earth. Critics, studios, merchandisers, unions, activists, you name it. And Tauriel became the lightning rod for that shift. Now you could argue that these outside influencers misunderstood Tolkien's approach to female characters. But I think it was more about the studios and critics, many of whom hadn't read beyond The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings, if even that. That, like with Star Wars, they saw a franchise that was ripe for monetization and or representation. Something that could be retooled, repackaged, and sold to a different era and different type of audience. And they assumed that said audience would just follow along blindly. Yet, despite all of that, for me, Tauriel still shines, if only in fragments. She could have been, should have been, a powerful voice within the Sylvan community, reflecting the tensions and transformations that led up to the War of the Ring, as well as the differences and variances and nuances of the different types of elves that exist in Middle-earth beyond just people with pointy ears and long hair. That's a potential that remains haunting to me and unrealized. But those are my thoughts. This is the Middle-earth Philosopher. Have a good day.